Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Council Caviello. Present. Council Falco. Present. Council Knight. Present. Vice President Longo. Present. Council Marks. Present. Council Scarpelli. Present. President Del Russo.
Present. 7 members present, none absent. Please rise to salute the flag. Aye.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
16-485, hearing. A public hearing will be held in the Howard F. Alden Memorial Chambers, City Hall, Medford, Massachusetts, on Tuesday evening, May 31st, 2016, at 7 p.m. by A&E Auto Repair Incorporated, doing business as A-Tech, to operate a Class 4 automotive repair and body shop at 67 Mystic Avenue, Medford, Massachusetts. Petitions and plans may be seen in the office of the City Clerk, room 103, City Hall, Medford, Massachusetts, 781-393-2425. Call 781-393-2501 for any accommodations, aids, TDDD. By order of Medford City Council, Edward P. Finn, City Clerk. Advertised in the Medford Mercury, May 23rd, 2016. So this is a public hearing, and so we just ask in public hearings that those who are in favor or those who are opposed of the item before us present themselves to the podium and state just that, whether they're in favor or opposed when called forward. It's not a period for discussion or merits, as is custom in a public hearing. So at this time, the chair invites anybody in favor of this item to present themselves to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and whether that you are in favor. Anybody in favor of this matter before us? No one is in favor. Is the petitioner present? Please come forward. Are you in favor of this matter, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Your name and address for the record.
Eliane Ferreira. And my home address?
Yes.
51 Chafford Street in Somerville, Mass. 02145.
You're in favor?
Yes.
Very good. Anybody else in favor? Anybody else in favor? Hearing and seeing none, I declare that portion of the meeting closed. Anybody in opposition? Is anybody in opposition to this matter before us at 67 Mystic Avenue? Anybody in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, I declare that portion of the meeting closed. Chair recognizes Councilor Caviello. Licensing.
Mr. President, I have reviewed the papers earlier in the week, and I found them to be in order.
Can you tell us what operation was there presently? Are you taking over a business?
Yes.
You are. And can you tell us the scope of your business?
It is auto repair, and also we applying for a dealer, Class 2 auto dealer, that we are asking to permission to run the business as auto repair and use a car dealer.
And you're asking also, have you applied yet for the auto dealer's license?
Yes.
You have applied.
Yes.
Is that application before us, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it is, Mr. President.
Thank you.
It's also here.
But presently, we have this on the operation for a Class 4 auto repair and a body shop. So on the recommendation of Councilor Caviello for approval, seconded by Vice President Longo-Kern. All those in favor? Councilor Marks.
Just wondering if I can ask the petitioner what type of off-street parking do you currently have?
We have a parking in front of the building and also a few parking space on the side of the building.
When you say in front of the building, on public road or?
Oh no, it is on a lot.
Roughly how many spots do you have?
It is around 15 in front and around 8, 9 inside of the building.
And how many bays do you have?
2.
2 bays?
Yes.
Thank you.
On the motion of approval by Councilor Caviello, seconded by Vice President Longo-Kern. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations. Suspension of the rules, Madam Vice President, for what purpose?
Allow residents from the Evans Street neighborhood to speak to the council on an issue.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be seated. Is it on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda. I don't believe the residents put it on the agenda, but they
Is
asked.
there a resident from the Evans Street here to speak to the council? Please present yourself to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Purpose of your presence.
Shauna Smith, 91 Evans Street.
I'm sorry, your name?
Shauna Smith,
Sean Smith,
yeah, 91 Evans Street.
91 Evans Street. Welcome.
Thank you.
How can we help you?
My street's atrocious.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Your street's atrocious.
Our street is atrocious.
My street is atrocious. There's potholes, rocks, because the asphalt, there's no hot top, there's no asphalt anymore. So the gravel that's underneath, the big rocks, I have some in my pocketbook that I brought. This is what my daughter is riding her bike on and wiping out. A little boy broke his arm in September. My mother broke her hip 5 years ago from the street. I've called 7 times. I've called town hall. I've filed 2 things on C-Click Fix. They came out, they fixed the big pothole in front of my house, but it's not just the pothole, it's the rocks, because you can patch it all you want, but when there's, the street's crumbling. There was 4 open complaints on C-Click Fix this morning, and Lauren
What
from
is
the
it
mayor's
that you
office.
want us to do for you? You want the street paved?
Yeah, the street needs to be paved.
On the motion of Councilor Scarpelli that Evans Street be paved. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. If we could allow the resident to finish. It was open on C-Click Fix and
It was open on, there was 4 of them that weren't from me. I put 2 of them on there, but there was 4 of them from different neighbors. I don't know who they were, but I followed it. Like I voted to have it fixed, and I got 4 alerts, one after another, on my email. And Lauren in the mayor's office was happy to announce that the issue has been resolved and the issue is closed because it was fixed.
So they fixed the one pothole in front of your house
They
and considered
fixed
it.
that back in March.
Okay.
These are all new issues that have been opened up in the last week, and they're fixed.
We just had a meeting with the mayor, and Lauren was there giving us an update on the C-Click Fix, and it seems like Lauren from the mayor's office is the monitor of the situation, but I'm not sure why something like that was closed. I don't know, my colleagues can see the pictures, the street.
So that's the whole street.
That's the whole street.
They're in my driveway, they're in my front yard, they're in my backyard. That's my street.
And so in March, you reported the problem that one pothole was fixed, but nothing else, and then there's been 6 more complaints, 2 of yours, 4 others, and nothing's been done. They just were all closed out.
And this neighbor's, one of them, I think she's 90, and she said that she's lived there for 62 years and the street's never been paved. And her husband, who passed away, used to come to this meeting every time that Mr. Natola came, and he couldn't get anything done. Complaining about it, he probably died 20 years ago. Yeah.
I think this is the priority when we talk about taking $500,000 out of free cash, and you have, to do sidewalks. I think streets need to be included in that, or, we need to take a better look at some of our streets and how they're crumbling and get some of these fixed. And obviously Evans Street, for people to report it multiple times on C-Click Fix and have to come to a council meeting and actually bring rocks. We definitely see a problem, so I definitely move approval to see if we could get an estimate on how much it would cost to repave the street, and what their recommendations would be if we weren't to repave the whole street, but to get some resolve. It's terrible. I always say we are being reactive rather than proactive, but in this situation where you have a broken hip and a broken arm, it doesn't even look like we're being reactive.
If that was my daughter that broke her arm, and she's rollerblading, she's learning how to ride her bike, and she's hitting rocks this big and dumping, and not when she better not be hurt.
On the motion
Oh, there's my rock.
Councilor Scarpelli that Evans Street be repaved, seconded Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will support this tonight, but I can tell you firsthand, I've supported the last 4 times we've asked for Evans Street to be repaved, and we're still in the same situation. So I would ask my colleagues tonight, the mayor asked for approval of $500,000 for sidewalks. We have over $8 million in free cash that we put contingent upon the $500,000 that Evans Street be repaved. So if we make it part of that report, we know Evans Street will be repaved, and we won't be getting lip service anymore. I would venture to say that Evans Street is probably in the top 5 worst streets in the entire city, without any hesitation. And it's getting worse, and pothole patrol is really not what's needed. You need a whole new grind down and repaving of the entire street curb to curb. So I would ask that my fellow colleagues, I'll be more than happy to put that forward when we discuss the paper for $500,000 for sidewalks, that Evans Street, Pinkett Street is probably the 2nd worst street. So it's right next door to Evans. Then you have Wicklow, you have Pleasant Street. I mean, you can go down the list of streets that are in deplorable condition, but these residents have had to deal with the street for long enough. It's a public safety concern. When you drive down the street, you kick up rocks, which is a very dangerous situation. And, you know, I think that's probably the best way of doing it, because just merely another recommendation from this council is going to fall with the other 4 or 5 recommendations. So I would ask that we put that on the paper that's a little further on the agenda.
On the motion for approval,
If I could.
Chair recognizes Councilor Scarpelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the residents. I did come out yesterday and walk the streets with a couple of your neighbors, and it is horrible. I mean, I concur with my colleagues in the fact that one of the neighbors told me that she was bringing her groceries in about a year ago, and when she came back out, her back tire was gone because it was eaten by the sewer cover. So that is a dangerous street. I know that, but we do have, I know that the mayor announced tonight that we were graded, I believe, a 99 on the Open Streets grant process to move forward. So obviously there's money. I, as one, will really push for the Evans Street resurfacing it. And that's not it's not a pothole issue. This is a whole resurfacing issue. It's not, and I think that Lauren did do her job by closing out that pothole, but understanding that Evans Street isn't a pothole issue. It's the whole street. So thank you again.
Thank you. So on the motion for approval as seconded, I see that, Madam Vice President. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Robert Capucci of 71 Evans Street. So, I mean, just a few questions. When you say that Lauren did her job, there have been, going back a couple years now, reports to the city about this street. It spills out into Central Ave. These rocks are in front yards. They're on sidewalks. My question, I guess, is will we get a time frame of when this will be done? Because it is the summertime now. Kids are out of school. They're going to be all over that street. It's only a matter of time before a tire spins one of these up. I mean, we've already had injuries. With all due respect, Mr. President, is there any way we can get some type of time frame and when to expect this street to be fixed?
I do not know the answer to the question, but I'm sure Councilor Scarpelli might add an amendment to his resolution that we ask for a time frame on this when we place the question to the mayor's office.
Thank you very much. I mean, when we consider the surplus amounts,
for completion of the project be reported back to the council as soon as possible.
When we consider the surplus amounts in city coffers, and we have an endless list of taxes to be paid, quite frankly, and no disrespect to this body, but this is it's an abomination. It really is. And the amount of money that we pay as residents and taxpayers, that this wasn't done 2 years ago when you were first informed of this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, sir. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
John Sorello, 20 Metcalf Street. Mr. President, this is not an Evans Street problem. This is a citywide problem. And as a matter of fact, I was shocked to learn how many of public safety departments are understaffed in the city. And it was never brought up in the recent committee of the whole meeting with the mayor just a little while ago. And what it comes down to, I was shocked to learn that the Department of DPW, Public Works, has only 17 staffing. How could that be in a city the size of Medford? It should not be. Now, this is really a public safety problem. And this, I think this department is really second to the police and the fire department. So this is what should be brought up when you have a discussion about the budget. I mean, the whole council should go before the mayor and negotiate with the mayor to have these staffs improved. I'm surprised to learn, for instance, the police department is short 30 officers. How could that be in the city side? This is the first priority. Is that redundant, first priority? Anyway, this is the first priority of government. That's the reason we have government, is for public safety. So this council should not pass a budget until it is agreed that public safety will be improved in the city. And we should have a Department of Public Works can deal with all of these problems. We have problems with sidewalks, with tree stumps, with potholes, etc. So this should be dealt with, and this is the City Council's great opportunity.
Thank you, Doctor. Chair recognizes Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Just a point of clarification. I think when Dr. Starella referred to 17 employees in the Department of Public Works, he was referring to 17 employees that were just exclusively assigned to the Highway Division. But, Mr. President, I'd like to amend the paper to request that the matter be referred to the administration for inclusion in the capital plan. We just met with the mayor's office this morning, and they said that they're in the process of putting together a capital budget and a capital plan. And this is a capital expenditure, Mr. President, so I'd ask that they also put this on their list of items to add to the capital plan.
Thank you, Councilor. As amended, Councilor Cappiello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would it be possible to send the DPW down there tomorrow morning to put a temporary patch on that? Obviously, the street's not going to get paved tomorrow, but in the meantime.
Point of information, Councilor Scarpelli.
Unless they do the whole street, it's really not a patch.
I mean, if they get on there, at least fill it on a temporary basis. And
I think the big potholes they did, but from walking with it yesterday, it just...
Well, it's abundantly clear to all of us
whole
that
street.
the street's a hazard to everybody who lives there and drives on it, and it needs to be repaid, and it's been needing to be repaid for a decade.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rob Capucci, 71 Evans Street. Maybe if they could come by and pick up all these loose rocks that are, if that's possible. But if this gets added to the mayor's capital plan, what does that do in terms of a time frame of fixing the street? I mean, when do they meet on that? When is that discussed? When is that approved?
Point of clarification, Madam Vice President.
I think Councilor Marks hit the nail on the head with regards to that $500,000 free cash expenditure, associating this Evans Street, making it a condition of that, because the capital plan, the budget director, the mayor said it wouldn't be until they hire a budget director, which would be end of summer, fall, is when the capital plan would even, be discussed. So that would push it out a year or two. So I think too, if we can get councilors to condition Evans Street on that $500,000. This is exactly why we wanted a list of the $500,000, how it was going to be spent, so that we know streets like Evans or sidewalks that are in complete disrepair, the ones that are going to get done. And I think Mr. Cairns, who's the DPW director, is getting a copy of the list for us as we speak, so we can possibly bring that up later tonight, if not, hopefully by next week.
So then my next question would be, knowing this, why would a councilor request to put this on the capital plan that's going to push it out another year or two?
I don't think
it's
that's the
unprecedented.
council's intention. Point of information, Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I don't feel as though we should be making one project contingent upon another. 2 weeks ago, we sat here and we talked about sidewalks, and there's a dire need for us to repair our sidewalks. Last week, we talked about sidewalks. We talked about how there was a dire need to repair our sidewalks. There's certainly a dire need to repair many of our streets, Evans Street being one of them, Mr. President. But I don't feel as though holding one construction project hostage and make it contingent upon another is a good policy.
Point of information, Councilor Marks.
I think one of the reasons that was brought up last week, the reason why we need new sidewalks is public safety. So we can have all the great sidewalks we want, and then when a resident steps in the street into a 6-inch pothole line throughout the street, that's a public safety concern. So I think we have to address them when we see them. And this has definitely been an issue for a number of years, as the Council President mentioned, a number of years. I think this is the time. This is an emergency. This isn't something a wish list would say, the street, I'd like to have it repaved. This is an emergency. And I did the same thing Councilor Scarpelli did. I took a walk around the neighborhood, and this street, I venture to say, is one of the top 5 in the city of worst streets. And so you can imagine the condition it's in.
So we have a motion of approval on the floor.
The motions are, but I'm going to do it during, as Councilor Longo said, during that paper. People want to vote for it. If not, that's fine. But the money's there, and the need is definitely there on this particular street, and residents have been waiting a long time.
So on the motion for approval by Councilor Scarpelli, as amended by Councilors Longo-Kern and Councilor Knight, all those in, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Carabelli. Yes. Council Falco. Yes. Council Knight.
The amendment was to have Councilor Scarpelli ask that we have a time frame attached to that, and Vice President, resurface the street, have a time frame, and Vice President Longo-Kern had the amendment to cost estimate on that. And those were the 2 amendments to the main motion, and yours was that it be added to the Mayor's capital plan, Councilor. So on that motion, Madam.
Vice President Longo-Kern. Yes. Council Marks.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli. Yes. President Del Rosa.
Yes. We had an interruption in the calling of the roll. 7 members in affirmative, none in the negative. The motion passes. On the motion of Councilor Longo-Kern that we return to the regular order of business, all those in favor, all those opposed. 16-501, public hearing. Public hearing will be held in the Medford City Council in Howard F. Alden Memorial Chambers, City Hall, Medford, Massachusetts, on Tuesday evening, May 31st, 2016, at 7 p.m. on a petition from MCREF, Medford Development, LLC, under the provisions of Chapter 148, Section 13 of the General Laws of Massachusetts for a flammable storage license to park and store above ground 579 automotive vehicles, parking garage spaces with an estimated of 11,580 gallons flammable and vehicle gas tanks at 5 Cabot Road, Medford, Massachusetts, a office zoning district. Petition and plans may be seen in the office of the city clerk, City Hall, Medford, Mass. 781-393-2425. Call 781-393-2401 for any accommodations. The City of Medford is an EEO AA 504 employer. By order of the City Council, Edward P. Finn, City Clerk. Advertised, Medford Mercury, May 23rd, 2016. The matter before us is the request for parking and storage of above ground of 579 automotive vehicles, parking garage spaces with an estimated 11,580 gallons of flammable vehicle gas tanks at 5 Cabot Road. All those in favor, present yourself to the podium and state so. Are you the petitioner?
Petitioner's counsel, sir.
And your name and address for the record, please.
For the record, Chris Rainier from Goulston and Stores, 400 Atlantic Avenue, Boston, Massachusetts, 02210.
And you are in favor?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else in favor? Present yourself to the podium, please. Anyone else in favor? Hearing and seeing none, we declare that portion of the meeting closed. Anybody in opposition to this matter before us, please present yourself to the podium. Anyone in opposition? With no one presenting themselves in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the chair declares that portion of the meeting closed. Mr. Carafiello, Chairman of Licensing Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have reviewed the papers, and they appear to be in order here. Quick question, this is for the new parking facility up in Wellington, correct, along the river?
Correct, sir. This is on Cabot Road, the Mill Creek project, the residential project with the above-ground parking garage. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about the scope of the project and what type of project it is?
Certainly. Thank you. The project is an approximately 297 residential unit project. It does have 10% affordable units that will be set aside and allocated through a lottery. There are, as the Council President read into the record, approximately 579 parking spaces in the parking garage at the building. So we're here for the gasoline in the tanks of those cars, no underground storage tanks or anything like that. I did receive from the city clerk's office the sign-offs from the departments. I can submit those into the record if those are not in your packages, but we did receive no substantive comments from the town boards on the application.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you. I know in our packet it has like a description of the site, so you have the two lots, and then the project site is going to be separate than the garage? Or are we building on top of the garage?
So, no, we're not building on top of the garage.
Okay.
Actually, the building is going to wrap around the garage, so you won't be able to see the garage. One of the real benefits from the project is there's a nice open space, a nice park along the river that the project's going to enhance. So what we are doing is wrapping the parking garage with the building, so you won't see it when you're outside of it. But no construction on top of it.
And with regards to distances between the lot and the actual units, is there a decent, what's the distance between the lots and the lot and the unit when you are talking about that much gasoline?
I do have me with the project architect. That might be a question for Mr.
Thank
Carr.
you, Mr. Carr.
Doug Carr, 124 Boston Avenue, West Medford. Your question is a good one, Councilor. There's a firewall around the entire garage, separating the residential use from the garage. The garage is fully sprinkled. Fire chief and all the people in this building have signed off on the project. As you know, it's under construction, but it's a very good question. And as I mentioned before, I think that's, well, that's all. Let me know if you have any further questions. I'm happy to answer them for you.
So when you say firewall, if there was an explosion in the garage, the apartments would be safe. So there's an actual wall, or you're talking about the space? There's actually a concrete wall, and then there's actually a separate wall separated from it where the residences begin. So it's standard construction for when you would put a residential building against a parking garage. Great, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Mr. Carr. Thank
you.
Mr. President, a motion for approval.
Seconded by Council Knight. Motion approved by Council Carafiello. Seconded by Council Knight. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
505. B, you are hereby notified that by order of the City Council, a public hearing will be given at the Howard F. Alden Memorial Auditorium, 85 George P. Hassett Drive, City Hall, Medford, Massachusetts, at 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 31st, 2016, on a petition of National Grid for permission to construct a location of mains for the transmission and distribution of gas in and under the public streets, lanes, highways, and places of the City of Medford, and of the pipes, valves, governors, manholes, and other structures, fixtures, and appurtenances designed or intended to protect or operate said mains and accomplish the objects of said company, and the digging up and opening of the ground to lay or place same. Said underground located substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith, marked GPMED 614113-15-281, dated March 18, 2016. The following are the streets and highways referred to as part of the fiscal year 16-17 CIM NRPL 10 program. Main and Service Replacement recommends the relay of approximately 540 feet of 6-inch LP cast iron 1912-1922 with 18-inch plastic in High Street from Alston Street to Canal Street, and abandoned 15 feet of 6-inch LP cast iron 1910/1922. Approved, Chief Engineer. Based on the review of the engineer, this work can proceed forthwith, provided the following requirements are met. No city-owned or private utilities or other structures are adversely impacted. National Grid shall ensure that all sewer, water, and drain lines are marked prior to any excavation. The finished trench will consist of a well-compacted gravel and asphalt-based course. Given the routing of the new main, National Grid will pay the city its cost of milling and paving the affected segment of High Street from curb to curb. Before beginning work, the contractor shall notify DigSafe and shall obtain applicable permits from the engineering division. The contractor shall utilize the City of Medford regulations and standards for restoration, as well as remove all debris related to its work. Please call 781-393-2425 for any accommodations or aids. Signed, respectfully yours, Edward P. Finn, City Clerk. Plans can be viewed in the City Clerk's office downstairs in City Hall. Chair will open up this portion of the public hearing. For those who are in favor, anybody in favor of this project, please present yourself to the podium. Is the petitioner present? Hi, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Mr. President. Chris Marr, National Grid.
Welcome. And you are in favor of this?
Yes.
Anybody else in favor? Anyone else in favor of this project? Hearing and seeing none, we declare that portion of the meeting closed. Anybody in opposition to this project? Anyone in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, we declare that portion of the operation of the public hearing closed. And the chair recognizes Councilor Caffiello, chairman of the...
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've reviewed the documents and I find it to be in order. I'm very happy to see that you are going to be paving curb to curb. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe, Councilor, that that's going to be worked out with the City Engineering Office in terms of contribution that's going to be done. I believe that this is, our work is in response to paving that's happening on, I believe, one of the side streets. And so we're going to work with the Engineering Office to have them all paved at the same time after our work is completed.
Provided that everything is done curb to curb, Mr. President, I motion for approval.
On the motion approved by Councilor Caffiello, chair recognizes Councilor Scarpelli.
I'm sorry. I believe you said working on it. Is it? So it's not definite that that's part of the? Is that read into the as an agreement? Okay. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I might have misspoke. I meant more that once our work with the project is complete, that's will be what happens.
All right. I think that one of the biggest concerns are the questions from residents when the utilities do come in, and they're supposed to lay the compact and make sure that it's left the way that they found it. That some of the areas in the community are still sinking now. Mm-hmm. Can we put an amendment to that to make sure that there's a certain timeline involved with, with the engineering department to give us help with the timeline, that if that does happen, that there's coverage?
So you'd like an amendment that
there's a certain timeline allowed, that if there's sinkage, that the department comes back to resurface that.
Okay. So I think by way of ordinance, there's a year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Marks.
Thank you. Roughly how long will this job take, and when will the work be performed?
The work will be performed in the near to immediate future. I believe that this is one of our next projects that we have scheduled for this for this summer, early this summer. Work will probably be commencing, I imagine, in June, and it will typically take, due to the high traffic area, High Street, this project may take roughly 1 to 2 months.
1 to 2 months?
Yes.
And what time of the day will it be done?
Our typical work hours are between 7 to 3:30, but typically we work with the city depending on if there's traffic concerns and we have to work restricted hours in certain locations.
So you've worked with the police department already? Because this is definitely a high-traveled area.
Oh, yes. I don't believe we've reached out to the police department quite yet. I believe we were going to wait from how the grant of location hearing came from this meeting, and then we are going to then line up to talk with the chief of police and the police department in terms of details. And
Mr. President, maybe at some point there should be a paper added to these reports dealing with traffic impact, like we do for many other things in the community. And that may be helpful to see if there is going to be an alternate route that, depending on the type of work, and also what manpower is needed to protect the residents of this community around the construction area. So I'm not sure when we can discuss that, or maybe if it's a public safety subcommittee can discuss that issue, but I think it's an important issue, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I think Councilor Marks took the words right out of my mouth. A traffic management plan is something that I think we're going to need to start requiring when we start allowing public utilities to open up the ground, Mr. President. And looking at this particular paper, I'm happy to see that the work is going to be done from curb to curb, and I believe that this is done under a program, I think it's called SRFO or SROF, where the public utility actually gives the city the money, and then the city's responsible for going curb to curb, and the utility's actually going to get out of the paving business and allow the city to do it. So that I'm very excited about, Mr. President, and that's also something I think we really need to take a long, hard look at and make standard. We have the residents from Evans Street here talking about how patchwork repairs in the street have created a situation that they're in now where the place is falling apart. And I think that as we move forward and we start opening streets up, we need to really consider going curb to curb and the closing up of our streets when the work is done. But with that being said, Mr. President, provided that the public safety impact around our school is going to be addressed, I certainly have no problem with the paper.
Councilor Carfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that was one thing I wanted to bring up. You know that it would be advantageous to have this done before September when school starts, because that pretty much is right almost in front of the school.
Oh yes, Councilor, that will definitely happen. We are on a timetable because we will have to have our work complete in order for this for the street to be repaved this fiscal year as well.
Mr. President, motion of approval.
The motion approved by Councilor Caffiello. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to, well, actually, Councilor Knight mentioned something earlier about, National Grid getting out of the paving business. So, which is a good point. If they're giving the money to the city to actually pave the ground, to pave the new road curb to curb, what happens in a case where Councilor Scarpelli mentioned the streets begins to sag? Who's on the hook for it then? Does National Grid, are they on the hook to foot the bill again, or is that up to the city at that point? And I'm not sure if anybody knows the answer to that. Maybe that's a question that goes into the city engineer, but I think that's something, that's a question that needs to be asked. If National Grid's trying to get out of the paving business, which I understand, and it is curb to curb, I think it's an important question to ask, because a lot of these things do sag.
I can't offer any amendments because I'm chairing the meeting. But if I were on the floor, my amendment would be have the city engineer be prepared to explain all these matters to us at our budget hearing.
Absolutely.
Rather than torment her over the expense of money that we spend on rubber jackets for the men.
So if we could amend the paper then to actually have the city engineer report back to us to find out who is responsible for the additional cost if the road does begin to sag after we've received the funding from National Grid.
If If I could speak to that
Sure.
real briefly, typically if it's determined by the city engineer and National Grid agrees that it's a fault of our own trench, that there is settlement issues following the paving, then that would be something that National Grid would cover. We guarantee all our trenches, especially immediately following the repaving of the street. So that would be something that National Grid would cover. But if it turned out to be a fault of the paving contractor or something where there was an issue with the pavement that was put down, that would be something that National Grid would not be looking to cover.
Okay. Well, that's one of my main concerns. I mean, this is a problem throughout the city where, time goes by, before you know it, it sags into the ground. Before you know it, you have potholes and you have a whole street falling apart. So, I think it's something that we need to have addressed. And if we could have the city engineer come back to us with a response, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
On the motion approval by Councilor Caviello as amended, Councilor Knight.
Move approval, Mr. President.
Seconded by Councilor Knight. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries. 16-506, location of poles, attachments, and fixtures and underground conduits, Medford, Massachusetts City Clerk's Office. You are hereby notified that by order of the Medford City Council, a public hearing will be given at the Howard F. Alden Memorial Auditorium, 85 George P. Ashton Drive, City Hall, Medford, Massachusetts, at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 31st, 2016, on a petition by National Grid of North Andover, Massachusetts, for permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way: High Street. National Grid to remove and relocate a 1 SO pole on High Street at MH 616 to new P26 plus or minus 10 1 to 2 conduit. National Grid locating UGAL pole 26 High Street, rotary at Winthrop Street, across the street northwestwardly to be fed from manhole 616. A section of a 1 to 2 inch conduit to be placed between the pole and the manhole on the sidewalk. Sidewalk will be restored by National Grid on both sides. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be permitted to excavate the public highways and to run and maintain underground electrical conduits together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary for the transmission of electricity. Said underground conduits to be located substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith, marked National Grid, High Street, Medford, Massachusetts, number 214-99172, 4/29/2016. This was approved by the city engineer. Upon review of the petition, this work can proceed forthwith, provided the following are met. No city-owned or private utilities or other structures are adversely impacted. National Grid shall ensure that all sewer, water, and drain lines are marked prior to any excavation. Gesundheit. All impacted sidewalk will be replaced in same or better condition. Same or better condition. The existing pole base will be removed and the affected sidewalk panel saw cut and repoured. There must be a minimum of 3-foot sidewalk clearance at the location of the new pole in order to meet ADA requirements. Before beginning work, the contractor shall notify DigSafe, and shall obtain applicable permits from the Engineering Division. National Grid contractor shall utilize City of Medford regulations and standards as for removing all debris related to its work. Approved Superintendent Wires, etc. Edward P. Finn, City Clerk. Chair recognizes. Chair opens up the public meeting, the public hearing. To those who are in favor, anybody in favor of this project, please present yourself to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Tim Lyford, National Grid Electric, 170 Medford Street, Malden, Massachusetts.
Welcome. And you are in favor of this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else in favor? Anybody else in favor? Hearing and seeing none, we declare this portion of the meeting closed. Anybody in opposition of this? Anybody in opposition of this project of poles being replaced? Hearing and seeing none, the chair declares this portion of the public hearing closed and recognizes the chairman, Caraviello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I for one am glad you're moving this pole. Pole's been knocked down multiple times. It's just in a bad spot. In fact, on the last time it was knocked down, I happened to be at the Rotary with a truck pulling a trailer, hit the pole, and there was a gentleman walking by, and luckily I missed him. The guy would have died. Like I say, I'm glad you're moving it. We're moving it across the street, it looks like.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, I think this is a good move, and motion for approval.
The motion for approval by Councilor Caraviello. All those in favor? Councilor Marks, please.
Just if we could, Mr. President, while we have a representative from National Grid, I was hoping that Tim could take back to his superior the fact that this council is overdue on a report for double poles throughout the community. And if you remember, Mr. President, we were on a quarterly basis with National Grid for a period of time because of the number of double poles throughout this community. And I think over the last year, we kind of let our guard down a little bit, but if you look around the city, you're going to notice an increased number of double poles. And I realize they're not all National Grid. They may be the phone company, it may be the cable company, maybe the city on some of these poles. But I'd appreciate if you could send us a report on, I know there's a system that's used, I forget the name of the system, where you guys log in the double poles and who's currently on it. What's the name of the system?
I don't personally use this system, but I know what you speak of.
There's a system. If you could generate a report on the location, how long the double pole's been there, and who is on the pole, that would be helpful to this council.
Sure, I can look into getting that report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Marks. So on the motion approved by Councilor Caraviello, seconded by Councilor Marks, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Congratulations. The motion passes. Motions, orders, and resolutions 16-521, offered by Councilor Knight. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council hold a moment of silence in remembrance of firefighter Timothy Brennan, as May 26 marks the one-year anniversary of his untimely passing. Be it further resolved that the May 31st City Council meeting tonight be dedicated and adjourned in his honor. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. May 26th represents a one-year anniversary of the passing of firefighter Timothy Brennan, a lifelong Medford resident who was known to be seen running around Barry Park as a child and running in and out of burning buildings as a firefighter, Mr. President. He's sadly missed. He was a great public servant, but more importantly, he was a great friend and a great family man, Mr. President, and I ask that the council indulge me in remembering him on this anniversary date.
Please, if you would all join us in a moment of silence for deceased Medford firefighter Brennan. Petitions, presentations, and similar matters. 16-522, petition for Class 2 auto dealers licensed by Elaine F. Ferreira, 51 Tuff Street, number 2, Somerville, Mass. For A&E Auto Repair, doing business as A-Tech, 67 Mystic Avenue, Medford, Mass. On file, business certificate, building department, fire department, police and traffic impact, treasurer, letter of compliance, state tax ID numbers, workman's compensation, bond application. Chair recognizes Councilor Caraviello. Petitioner present? I think the petitioner may have left.
No, she's here.
Is she here? Ms. Pereira?
Oh, no, where's the left?
She left.
Is she in the hallway? Well,
she answered a number of questions for us during the public hearing portion.
Mr. President, I motion that we table this.
16-522.
I think she might have thought that they were both at the same time when she left.
Right.
So if we can table this and have her come back for next week.
Did you have particular questions for her?
She should be here. I did have a couple of questions, but...
On the motion of Councilor Caraviello to table, all those in favor, all those opposed? 16-523, petition by Eric M. Reed, 158 Jerome Street, Medford, to address the City Council on infrastructure.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Reed. I'm not used to this mic, so do I sound all right? I live at 158 Jerome Street, and I'm here to discuss Medford infrastructure. Evans Street was one of the topics of my conversation. I know you just mentioned resurfacing that road, but it's also going to need a new gas main and most probably a new water main before you could resurface it, because nobody's been around there in 68 years. So you should consider that as part of your schedule. So I just want to read my petition. I've been trying to contact the mayor's office regarding infrastructure since January 1, and she hasn't responded. So I have all the documentation over here, which I want to leave with the council as part of the official record. And for now, I'm going to read my petition. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the brave men and women of our armed services, including the police, for protecting our cherished freedoms. Thank you, Mayor Stephanie, for reminding us at the Veterans Memorial Service yesterday that freedom of speech and religion are our cherished rights because they are essential to protecting human dignity. I thank all servicemen and women and veterans again for affording me the right to be here before the Honorable City Council. In peace. And now, to the petition. I'm here to petition the mayor's office to respond to my correspondence, 7 months worth of correspondence, and numerous calls to her office which have been completely ignored. Having worked for the engineering department last summer for 5 months, I have some major concerns regarding improvements to Medford infrastructure. And now I'm going to read the petition. It's actually in a petition format. It wasn't sent to anybody. I'm going to read it here. Whereas numerous roadways in Medford are in disrepair, water mains are in need of replacement, drainage and sewer systems are in need of work, numerous neighborhoods have been waiting for years for promised improvements yet to materialize, whereas close to $10 million of state funds are available for this work, whereas the citizens and taxpayers of Medford have a right to know how our tax money is being spent, whereas you made commitments in your campaign to openness, transparency, communication, accountability, and performance, whereas you state on your website you have completed budget reviews for all departments, whereas water projects planned for construction as far back as 2014 have not started yet. This would indicate that other streets needing work, such as Evans, are simply added to the backlog. Sewer projects removing inflow and infiltration have been put on hold. We, the citizens of Medford, request a complete inventory of all engineering department projects in planning, out for bid, and under construction with a status and budget summary. So water. It is imperative that Medford complete essential water main replacement work this construction season, and it is already very late to get started. Our streets such as Gurley, Dwyer, Evans could have been done last year, but the engineering department said they did not have the budget. This does not match the posted water main repair allocations for cities and towns on the MWRA website, which indicates that they have $4 million available for water main repair, which hasn't been used. As a matter of fact, it's a 10-year allocation. We're starting year 7 of this $7 million 10-year allocation, and we haven't spent a penny. So that's water. Sewer is more or less similar. Preventing sewer inflow and infiltration into the system and upkeep is an ongoing effort for any municipality. The city engineer stated the department is not interested in pursuing this work. The current unused MWRA I&I allocation for Medford is now near $4 million at 75% grant. Misusing or not using these funds is an extreme disservice to Medford residents. Please explain the status of this account and the ongoing efforts to improve the sewer systems. Now, roadways. Many roadways are in need of repair, and we have received another $1 million of Chapter 90 for this year. What is the status of the roadway repair plans? Evans should have been done last year, but it's still not done. The city has applied for $400,000 of state funding for sidewalk repair. How will this effort be implemented? Not to complete essential projects this season aggressively is not in keeping with the mission of City Hall or the performance and accountability standards the citizenry deserve. Another construction season is here, and we cannot afford more lost opportunity. And that was a petition. So now, I would like to submit the body of correspondence from me to the mayor's office, which I consider public, to be included in the City Council official records. Thank you very much. Here, take this with you, sir. It's next. Yeah, which I consider public, to be included in the City Council official records, hopefully part of this meeting records. I know there's a lot of paper over there, but computers have a lot of storage these days, so it's no big deal. To be included in City Council official records so the general public may have access to this information regarding City of Medford engineering and construction policy. I hope this information will help Medford residents and I get real and deliberate answers from the mayor's office regarding these issues. I am here to petition for a meeting with the mayor to discuss her construction implementation plans for this summer. So in summary, the engineering department stated last summer they did not have the budget to do water main replacement on Gurley, Dwyer, or Evans Street, which I was pushing for, because they need to be reconstructed and you can't reconstruct them unless the water main has been fixed first. Otherwise, you ruin your paving job. So the MWRA site indicates they have $4 million available for this water work for Medford. The engineering department stated they were not interested in pursuing I&I sewer work, while Medford had $3 million in the MWRA account at 75% grant. We are applying for $400,000 of state funds for sidewalk repair, with limited resources to implement this program. Why hasn't construction started yet? Our season is flying by and it appears we are not prepared. And so my offer to the mayor, I'm in the correspondence, you'll see I have numerous offers and suggestions to the mayor trying to push all of this infrastructure work. My offer to the mayor outlines what I think is a creative way for the engineering department to get needed help paid for by state and not city tax revenue. It's included in the package. This is a freebie and a windfall for the city, and I still can't get a response. These are some of my observations and concerns which are critical, especially when the engineering department and DPW say they are not interested in speaking to me and the mayor hasn't released these budgets yet anyway. Could this be true? So let me read that again because it confused me.
Sir, you have 1 minute left.
All right. I encourage everyone who cares to read the backup material I have provided to the City Council. I hope you members of the City Council also take the initiative to read the material. It will provide an insight into how decisions are made at City Hall. General public, please feel free to contact me with questions, concerns, or ideas. My contact information is on the documentation I have submitted, and hopefully the general public will be able to see that. Once again, I'm here to petition for a meeting with the mayor to discuss her construction implementation plans for this summer. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak before City Council. Sincerely, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Chair recognizes Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Eric, if you don't mind, through the chair, you said you worked for the city of Medford?
I worked as a temp last summer for 5 months.
And what title, what position did you hold?
Engineer.
Oh.
And we accomplished quite a bit last summer. I started off doing the pothole repairs. We moved on to sidewalks. I did a lot of the running around, all the measuring to get all these streets done. I measured all of those streets up, got them ready for paving, and I did the drainage work over there at Boston Ave in Arlington and Forest Street. So I got quite a chunk done, and then I was let go. And if you look at all the proposals I actually applied for, I offered to help engineering, and I had an outline to get all this street work done. And I was constantly told that they're not interested in doing it. So here I am. It doesn't seem reasonable to me that that would be the answer, an appropriate answer from City Hall, that we have all this money, we have streets falling apart like Evans, and we're told that they're not interested in doing that work, that they don't have the budget, when MWRA website clearly indicates that we have plenty of money there to do the work.
And when you had mentioned the 3 to 4 million with the 75% grant, and then for sewer, and then 4 million for water, you're talking, that's about 7 million that's in the MWRA that we could be applying for, is that what you mean?
Absolutely, yes. I asked these questions of the mayor's office, and when I didn't get any response, I went on Google, and it all came right up.
And these are the 0% loans or full
Well,
grants?
they vary. I mean, I don't know what the conditions are on the water, but it's very generous terms, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I know on the I&I, it's 75% grant. You can't beat that.
No, I thank you for your hard work. I know probably Council Marks will talk about the infiltration. I know we have some serious work that needs to be done in Medford, and we did grill the city engineer at last budget.
Well, I was working on removing I&I, 3 catch basins from a sewer line on, what's that street called? Right next to Golden. I forget the name of the street. It's by McCarthy Storage.
Alexander or Frederick? Or?
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the street down there.
Fulton?
No, it's right next to Golden. It's between Harvard and Golden. I forget the name. So anyway, we were working on that, and even that was stopped. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could have had. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but these are issues which I would hope people consider seriously, because as you can see, they're starting to impact Medford residents in a public safety manner.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Council Carviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if we could forward this paper to the city engineer for
On the motion for
comments.
Council Carviallo to forward the paper to the city engineer for commentary. On that motion, Council Marks.
And also to discuss an implementation plan with the mayor.
Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Reed, for your presentation. I'd like to hear a little more about what your thoughts are or reasoning why, if there's funding available from the MWRA, what is the biggest hurdle in the city to not moving forward on some of these projects that are so much needed in this community?
You know, I got to be honest with you. I'm trying to get answers to that. I can't get any reasonable answers, but from my perspective, we had Gurley Dwyer and Evans Street. I was pushing. They were slated. All the documentation was on my computer, okay? We were going to push them out. I was into budgets. I was into working. And so I don't know why that happened. I really have no idea. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Is it a lack of manpower? Is it a lack
Well,
of
right now, clearly, there's
leadership? I mean, it has to be something.
There is a lack
You were
of-
in the department for 5 months. You must have some indication why.
There's no communication.
No communication.
I went out and did everything on my own initiative. I worked very well with Mark Shea, who is very good with field work, and, you know, on the construction side. I think we got a lot done. But as far as policy goes, I have no idea what the thought process is. I'm trying to figure that out myself because, I was shocked to find that the money was sitting there in such large sums recently after being told last summer that we didn't have budget to do a mountain of work that I was proposing. And if you read the documentation carefully, hopefully you'll be able to scan it and put it online. You'll see that it just leaves big questions, not good questions, very big questions.
So ultimately, in the engineer's office, who would be responsible for making sure that Medford takes advantage of these particular loans and grants from the MWRA?
Well, as an engineer, from my perspective, it's the responsibility of the engineering department to track the condition of Medford infrastructure,
right. But who
and make prioritized repairs, prepare the plans,
right. But
prepare
who
the
in
design.
particular? Who in particular?
It would have to be the leadership of the department.
So the chief engineer would be
well,
responsible.
technically, in any department, the leader obviously would define the mission.
I'm just
so
going
to
to caution that we not move to impugn anyone.
Exactly, that's what I'm.
Thank you.
Department.
Well, you've made a lot of accusations, sir. So, I don't think it's fair to.
Budgets are budgets. I'm not accusing anybody.
No, you're
budgets
not.
Are
you're
budgets.
not accusing. But when I'm asking the questions on where has there been a lack of communication and where is the process failed, I mean, I think those are legit questions. And you were there for 5 months, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yes.
Who would know best than someone that worked in the department? And if there is funding available, and we were told on many occasions, because as you mentioned, Mr. Reed, that many of these grants and programs that are run by the MWRA are lengthy in nature. And if you don't take advantage in 1 year, you can actually take advantage the following year on projects, as long as that you have a plan in place.
Exactly.
So I've been told in the past that the city of Medford has exhausted all the revenue or funds, I should say, available from the MWRA, and even the zero interest free loans that are, I think, outside of what you've discussed regarding what's available. So I'm very concerned that if there is funding that the city is not taking advantage. This council has talked ad nauseum about I&I. I think we're at about 50% inflow and infiltration. It's costing the ratepayers that pay water and sewer in this community millions of dollars to pay for inflow and infiltration and treat it as raw sewage. The leak detection program is another issue that we've had in this community, and so I'm very concerned. I agree with Councilor Carviello. I think this paper should be forwarded to the city engineer for response, and also, if need be, that the mayor get involved to find out why we're not moving forward on projects. If that is the case, that Evans Street, you were working on a project on Evans Street for the water main back some time ago, you're right. It wouldn't make any sense for this council to approve the repaving of Evans Street if the water main wasn't done. So that's the first I'm hearing about.
Well, this is why I was trying to push so hard, because recognizing that it takes a year to get good settlement, you know, like your problem, the gas company, we don't want our water mains to do the same thing, have trench settlement. So the idea is to get the water main done the year prior and then move in next year and do the roadway repair. And, you know, you got to remind the gas company they got to jump on Evans Street too. And that's how normally it's done. But now we're caught again, and everything's pushed out another year. Water main wasn't done last year, so now what does that mean? They got to wait another year for the roadway to get done? That's where we're at. That's basically where we're at.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Marks. On the motion of Councilor Carviello that this paper be forwarded to the city engineer. Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Just as an amendment, if we could get a response also from the mayor's office with regards to that package, and if we can be scanned, the documents. I know we can go to the city clerk and get them, but if the council could be scanned, what you had given us, so that we can review it at our own leisure at home.
The entire packet was sent to us in our weekend packets on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that motion of amendment by Vice President Longo-Curry, sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Robert Capucci, 71 Evans Street. Just to address some of the things that were talked about here, I don't think Mr. Reed was coming up here to try to be accusatory. I just think he was asking for accountability and transparency on issues that have been going on in the city of Medford for years, if not decades. When I ran for this body in 2013, it was my main issue was the water pipes. You're asking the citizens of Medford to pay for the rainwater and the snow melt. You add that to the meals tax, the sales tax, the property tax, which is about to have a surcharge put on it, and we want answers as to why things are not being done. The Honorable Mike Marks asks, well, where do you think that the lack of communication came? Well, you heard my neighbor and friend earlier tonight say 4 recent additions to C-Click Fix were taken down today as resolved, and obviously they're not. Those pictures I took were yesterday. This gentleman is talking about a state allocation of $4 million that we could be using on top of what is in the excess of the water account now. It's like $7 million or something like that was the last report I heard. Now we're talking about $10 or $11 million. It doesn't need to be discussed or pushed forward anymore. It's not just Evans Street. It's also Pinkard Street around the corner from me. In working on several campaigns that I've worked on and ballot initiatives, walking around the city through the Heights, through South Medford. It literally the whole city with some streets being at an emergency condition with matters of public safety. We're asking questions about all the tax dollars that we pay and the fees that we pay, the parking meters with people paying after 6 o'clock. I mean, where is all this money going? I think it's not being done because it looks great sitting in the accounts, and then Medford elected public servants can go around and say, well, Moody's just upgraded our credit rating to AAA, and yeah, that's great. On paper, but when you look through and walk through the city and you're wondering why communications are going ignored from people who work for the city, and you ask questions like, where's the problems and where's the miscommunications? It's right there, and we're just asking for the work to be done that has been years in dire need of it happening. You got the budget next month. I hope a lot of people will come down and ask questions and hold you folks accountable and transparent to the citizens that are paying for all of this, that are not getting anything back. When Dr. Storello talked about the police department deficiencies, I hope people will come tomorrow night to the town hall that the chief will have at the police station and ask questions there. But I know you sigh, and I'm talking, and I'm taking too much time, President Della Russo. But these are very important things. It's a matter of public safety. It's a matter of work not getting done with all of the money sitting there when petitions are being ignored for months. I'm sorry, but it's really at the brink, and this body really needs to come together and do something to light a fire under this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Us.
Yes, I just want to emphasize that it's not budgets, it's really implementation. We need implementation, because we can talk about budgets till we're blue in the face, but until people actually get together and figure out how we're going to get this done and come up with a real plan, it's just talk.
On that motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Carries. Reports of committees, 16-524. Committee of the Whole report from May 25th, 2016 on municipal aggregation. Committee of the Whole met last week, Wednesday at 6 o'clock in the council office to hear a presentation on municipal electrical aggregation from the Office of the Environment. I think they call themselves the Office of Sustainability now. The purpose was to review and discuss the paper on municipal aggregation. There was an authorization plan presented to us. a rather steep schedule. There was a presentation on to us on what is municipal aggregation. Homeowners would be able to choose which electric company they want, National Grid or Good Energy or others. There would be a public hearing for people to sign up to. There was a request to check other cities and towns to see how they may have dropped out. And upon the motion of Councilor Caviello, paper was reported out of committee, and that motion passed. We are expecting in the coming weeks a presentation before us from the Office of Energy and Environment on this matter, but you had presented to you a rather detailed explanation of the process, and I know Alicia Hunt is available to all of you to answer any of your questions you might have on the matter. On the motion of Councilor Caviello to receive and place on file, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Papers in the hands of the clerk by the request of Councilor Caviello to take papers in the hand of the clerk under suspension. All those in favor? All those opposed? Offered by President Della Russo. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council offer its sincere condolences to the family of the Reverend Francis Garrity on his recent passing. Father Garrity served at St. Raphael Parish. He was pastor of St. Francis of Assisi Parish and also served for many years as chaplain of the Medford Police Department. And I might add, as a fellow alumnus of St. Anselm College. So if you would rise and join in a moment of silence for this good priest and good former citizen of Medford. Offered by Councilor Caviello, be it resolved that the Medford City Council discussed Republic Park ticketing of Gaston Street the first day after Memorial Day, starting at 6 p.m. Councilor Caviello, 6 a.m., I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, my day started nice and early with emails from a resident about cars being ticketed 6 a.m. on Gaston Street, and I made some phone calls around, and I was informed that there are signs up there saying that permit parking is because of the pond, Wright's Pond. Permit parking is from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is that's fine. But I mean, Republic Park, they had to wait till first thing in the morning, 6 a.m. to start hitting these people with tickets without giving them any notice. I mean, it's kind of been a lax thing over the years, but I would have think that the people could have at least given a few days to get the permits, rather than start ticketing, Mr. President, at 6 a.m. in the morning. I mean, talk about taking the low-hanging fruit.
Very sad.
It's very sad, and I would think we need some type of explanation. These people need maybe a little bit of time to go out and get the permit. Just say one day after the holiday is kind of, let's say I understand there is a sign there, and but I think a little leeway would have been nice.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you. I think Councilor Carviello hit the nail on the head. I too got the emails, a lot of upset people who went out to work, said they were going to get the permit, this week, and they have a ticket on their car. It had to have come 6:30 in the morning. Yeah. I just feel like some warning should have been given, or at least a couple days leeway for them to obtain the permit. I think the way it's worked in the past years is they've had a week or two to get their permit before the city jumped on it, and it seems like a low way on how to collect revenue, where there's obviously other violations that aren't enforced at all, such as parking on some of our sidewalks in the city that really should have the attention, and we don't give the attention to those types of violations. So it is unfortunate. I felt terrible for the person, although there is signs up there. It's just a terrible way, and I hope that while the city solicitor and the mayor are looking into the issues with regards to the sale of Republic, that some of these things are addressed and discussed, and we make improvements through the whole system. Obviously not the one or two little things that have been improved upon so far, but we really need some serious improvement.
Mr. President, I would hope that the mayor's office would look into this matter and hopefully make a recommendation to Republic to give these people a little bit of levity in getting a permit.
On the motion of Cavill that these people be given a break, Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I'd like to amend the paper to request that the Traffic Commission waive the tickets for all residents who purchase a permit. Same thing, but at least we can make official action of the Traffic Commission.
As amended by Councilor Knight. Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think what we're seeing now is that when you looked at the last financial report, it's clear to me that Republic is not taking in the money they expected. And these are the type of things we're seeing now throughout the community, is that they're generating revenue any way they can. And you're absolutely right. You know, when you outsource a program and lose local control, this is what happens. This is exactly what happens, because if this was done in-house, like the original recommendation, we would have total control over what happens with the program, when the ticketing takes place, and how aggressive you're going to be. We were always told by Mayor McGlynn, this program is not a revenue generator. It's just to provide parking enforcement and public safety in the community. And, you know, you bet your bottom dollar that when you hire an outside company, that's not their train of thought. Their train of thought is how much money and where can we maximize our money. And so that's what we're seeing right now. This is no secret. You know, we knew this was going to happen. And when revenue starts to drop, we're going to find more and more angles that Republic is going to use to generate money. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, it'd be nice if I agree with Councilor Caviello, Councilor Longo, and Councilor Knight's recommendation about asking that they receive their money back. However, I think we should take it one step further. And you know, we heard from the mayor tonight that seniors are going to be allowed to pay $25 up front for a senior pass per year. And you know, the seniors I've spoken with are still waiting for the free parking for seniors that they were promised back some 7 or 8 months ago, that seniors wouldn't have to pay for parking in this community. So I'm a little disappointed in the negotiations that are taking place between the administration and Republic. And I think what we're seeing right now is a company running rampant in this community and really not caring what the administration has to say or what the administration wants to do about improving the traffic enforcement in this city. So I think, Mr. President, that, you know, Councilor Cavill, I think you called for a meeting with Republic. I'm not sure why we can't meet with them. Maybe because we don't sign the contract, we can't meet with Republic. Is there a reason, Mr. President, why we can't meet with Republic? Right. I think it's only appropriate now. We're the ones fielding the phone calls. We're the ones getting the emails from angry residents that are concerned why they're getting ticketed and tagged. So I think a meeting immediately, Mr. President, is appropriate.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the citizen at the podium. Welcome, and please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rob Capucci again, 71 Evans Street. There's another issue going on at Republic. I'm not sure or not if it's supposed to. I believe it is. But these machines are supposed to shut down at 6 o'clock. They're not. In the last month and a half, just walking through the city, I told a good dozen people, just tonight, I went to the store before coming here, and at 6:40, there was a young lady starting to feed money into the meter. And I said, no, you don't have to pay right now. It's 6 o'clock. And she said, well, I didn't know that. And I said, well, it's on the parking sign, but it's written very small. She said, well, it would have been a little bit more helpful if it was actually on the meter itself, that it closes at 6 o'clock.
The machines lock at 6 o'clock. You cannot put any more money in.
I beg to differ.
No, I've tried it myself. 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, they will not take any money. They lock.
Are you absolutely sure of that? Because I've seen people feeding. If there's a way to request receipts and to look at that, because I mean you're putting in your personal information. If people are paying after 6 o'clock, and I mean, as Councilor Marks alluded to, they're trying to generate revenues, I wouldn't be surprised a bit if some of these machines are taking money after 6 o'clock. Just my opinion. But I would look into their receipts, see if they are or not. Thank you.
All those opposed, motion carries. Offered by Council Caraviello, be it resolved that the Medford City Council request an update from National Grid on the work being done on 4th Street. Steel plates have been on Riverside Ave and 4th Street for an extended period of time. Council Caraviello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I received a phone call from a neighbor today on 4th Street wanting an update on from the Fells Way down to Riverside Avenue with National Grid. Those plates have been in the ground for some time, and there's several locations of where those plates are. Some actually, there's a couple, there's like 3 or 4 on 4th Street, and there's also some at Riverside Avenue in front of Budweiser. If we can get a report from National Grid on the status of the project and when it's going to be completed, we appreciate it, Mr. President.
On the motion of Council Caraviello, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to suspend offered by Councilor Knight on today being the day of retirement of the President Emeritus of the Medford City Council, Robert A. Maiocco, Jr., who today retired after a 42-year career with Wells Fargo Securities. Councilor Knight, the reason for your request for suspension of the rules.
Congratulations to Mr. Maiocco. It wasn't for that. You really threw me off there for a second, Mr. President. I'd like to take paper 16-491, $500,000 appropriation to replace sidewalks and stumps throughout the city.
That is 16-491, $500,000 to replace sidewalks and stumps throughout the city. Councilor Knight, the paper is now before us. We have with us who gave us quite detailed testimony the acting commissioner of Public Works, Mr. Brian Cairns, was with us in our meeting with the mayor today, at which we discussed many of the aspects of this, as well as we've discussed so many of them earlier this evening, which I'm sure will be repeated again. But Mr. Cairns was going to bring to us some reports tonight, so he's going to hand those to the messenger so that we can have those. Just to remind the councilors, of which they are also very well aware, but the public might not be, that because this paper was tabled, all the amendments that were on it were killed and by parliamentary procedure, and so therefore nothing was reported out, nor were there any formal requests made to department heads. But in his hyper-efficiency, Mr. Cairns, our acting superintendent, has complied with our requests in a desire to serve the public very well. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. President, I for one was satisfied at the last presentation. I feel as though our sidewalks need to be repaired. I feel as though a $500,000 appropriation is a good place to start. I don't think it's a good place to finish, Mr. President. But with that being said, I think there were certain individual councilors here that had more concern than I did as to whether or not this was a worthwhile appropriation.
Very good. We have being given to us now a stump inventory, looks like by neighborhood, very detailed. And we have outstanding requests for sidewalk work, again, quite detailed here, quite detailed. Madam Vice President. And if we could get an extra copy, that'd be placed in the record with the clerk's office.
If I could just ask a question, because it does look very detailed, but so just going off the first one, the stumps, this is every stump on the list?
As of today.
As of today, so total stumps, 192?
That's 192 reported stumps in the city, that's correct.
And when we discussed it in committee this evening at 6 o'clock, I think you said it would be about 100 to 125,000 to remove all 192 stumps.
That would be approximate, depending on their size.
And then if you could just explain what you printed out for the actual sidewalks to us.
Okay. On the sidewalks, Madam Vice President, is a breakdown on the date that the original call or request came into Public Works. It's broken down by ward and precinct, the name of the individual making the request, the location, telephone number if they chose to give it to us, and a description as far as what they feel had to be done in front of their either business or residence.
And to break that down, how many are in this?
Okay, all together, it was a little over 600, between both lists combined.
Over 600 sidewalks that need to be replaced.
Yes, because on the stump inventory, Madam Vice President, that would also, include replacing the sidewalks once they're removed as well.
So there'll be at least, with the stumps, 192 sidewalk panels replaced, because we do plan on getting rid of all 192 stumps.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that replacing the panel was also included in your estimate of the 100 to 125?
Yes.
So that brings this list down to about 400 panels?
That's correct. Some of them you'll see, Madam Vice President, could be asphalt, but there isn't as many asphalt requests as there are concrete.
And with the 500,000, we'll do all the stumps and those panels, and then about how many, I guess that's where my issue lies. We won't know how many of the 400 on this list will be done.
No, you have two things here. One, of course, we're already well into the season, so as far as how the actual bid prices come in, all right, that's number one. But then also, two, you only have 4 months left this year as far as where you can actually do concrete work. Once you leave the month of October, there's a lot of risk involved. So we'd have to cease operations and then pick up in April when there'd be a break in weather.
And do you have a directive of where exactly you'd start on the list? Are you going to start from the top of this list, or are we going to just kind of?
Okay, each ward and precinct has locations that go back, several years. All right, those areas would be done first. All right, the ones that have 2 or 3 or 4 years old, to try to clean them up, and then we'd have them again, if we could, have 2 crews out there, one solely dedicated to the tree stump list, and the other just dedicated to the residential of the business list, and just go from ward to different wards and precinct one by one.
And the farthest we go back here is 2000 and 13.
There's several in the Madam Vice Chair that 2014, I know, and I think there's a couple 2013.
My concerns would be the older ones get done obviously first, and the ones that are obviously in the most disrepair get done first.
Yes.
My main concerns initially when we talked about this for an hour last week is just that I don't want to, dedicate 500,000 and then only have done, because you did say if there's many panels on one street, and even if they're not reported, we're going to do the whole street. My concern is I don't want to spend this 500,000 on a named 10 streets and not get the list done of especially the people that have been complaining for years or that have, terrible sidewalks.
Sure.
That is my concern.
I can understand that, Madam Vice President. I mean, each location will be assessed. Those that are obviously the most deplorable condition and the oldest would be addressed first. And then as we get further into the contract, there may have to be some readjustments depending on need and location, getting the most serious public safety threats done first.
If we can make that part of the paper that condition on the vote that we do the oldest and the ones that are in most disrepair first. And obviously, if the council could be updated after the 4 months of what has been done.
Certainly. So if we could have some clarity, so we're going to have an amendment that the streets, the sidewalks be done, that the oldest and most outstanding be given priority, and that the council receive frequent updates as to the project's progress. Did we understand that correctly, Madam Vice President?
That would be great.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilor Falco.
Actually, I think Councilor Vice President Longo already mentioned it, but if you could just have a, when you've paved your last sidewalk and pulled your last stump out for the season, if we could just have a report like this, just with an update. Just kind of,
certainly, Councilor.
Just so we can see
what was accomplished.
Yeah, what was accomplished with the 500,000, or however much money is being appropriated here. So it'd be nice just to kind of see actually how much we're getting done.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I'd also like to request a copy of the RFP as well as the contract with the selected bidder when that becomes available to us. But I move for approval.
Amended by Councilor Knight. Requested a copy of the RFP. Chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brian, I appreciate the list. This is more thorough than we had 2 weeks before us, 2 weeks ago. My question to you, Brian, I don't know if it was asked 2 weeks ago, but how do we rate, when you get a call or an email from a resident, how do we rate the sidewalk? Do we have a key of conditions that we rate it and then give it a numerical number? How do we go about this?
Well, first off, all right, is it a public safety hazard? Which would be, we'll say, like a tree trip where you have several panels that potentially are buckled. All right, that's a public safety hazard. So that's top priority one. All right, then you've got priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 2 would be a sidewalk, all right, that has some pieces of asphalt, potentially concrete that are missing. All right, and then priority 3 would be cosmetic, something like a hairline crack in a panel or two in front of their home. All right, or potentially, all right, a little dip in the asphalt that may be in front of the home, depending on what they have.
So on this particular outstanding request list that you gave us, is there a reason why they're not listed as priority 1, priority 2, priority 3?
The reason for that is because the inspection of these different requests has just begun. Up to this point, it's been strictly just an intake into our system because of funding sources.
Right. So we don't even know from this current list what might be a minor repair, a hairline fracture in the cement, or something that requires, a panel being raised because of a tree root. So we don't know the extent of what's on this list.
As far as the accuracy of the tree stump contract, that's accurate. As far as the tree stump one. As far as the actual one with just the residents of the businesses on it, no. But from past experience, all right, most are usually accurate. In some cases, you realize that maybe their next door neighbor has the same problem, and that was never reported.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't think anyone behind this railing is opposed to doing sidewalks over. But I could just state from previous experience, it was back in 2012 when I believe it was Jack Buckley was the DPW commissioner, that he came before us. He asked for the exact amount, $500,000 for sidewalk repairs. He didn't present any supporting documentation at the time, and the council asked that he go back and provide a thorough list of what work needs to be done, where the locations are, the age of the request, and he did that back in 2012. And I have a copy of it in front of me, and it's color-coded, and let me just state that he provides us a key, and I'm not sure why it would change from one DPW director to the next DPW director, unless you come out with a much better way of tracking then I could see why you changed the reporting. But I could just tell you from the two reports that I received, the one back in 2012 clearly delineates what has minor repair, what has poor, what they consider poor, and major. And to me, that gives you at least an indication what you need to go after. On your list, there's no indication. I mean, you yourself just said we really didn't have the manpower to go out and do a thorough review of each of these sidewalks. This is just a report.
Yes.
So anyone can call and say, my sidewalk is awful.
That's
okay, what's your name, address, ma'am? And they go on the list. So, you know, I still don't understand what we're going to accomplish on this list. Are we going to be replacing sidewalks that have a hairline fracture? I mean, is that what the intention is of this 500,000?
No, absolutely not. Okay, it's strictly, you know, public safety hazards. I have the number one priority now.
So what do we, Brian, I don't want to cut you off, but what do we, because I've been hearing this year after year after year, what do we tell residents when they call up? They say, okay, I have a concern with my sidewalk. Doesn't it make sense to go out to the sidewalk, investigate it, then get back to the resident and say, ma'am, you know what? We noticed you can't eat off your sidewalk. There is a hairline fracture, but in the list of priorities, you're not at the top priority. Your sidewalk probably won't be done for several years. So people are led to believe this sidewalk is going to be done that may have a hairline fracture, and it never gets done. You know what I'm saying? There's no accounting.
Yeah, no, I realize what you're saying, but you also got to realize in 2012 and then also in 2016, all right, there's a significant change in staffing. All right, the engineering division back then had 2 field inspectors, assistant city engineer, a permit supervisor, and the city chief engineer. All right, today there is no inspectors. Okay, up to this point.
What happened with the inspectors?
Okay, that was before my time, Councilor.
They retired, were let go, you don't know?
Okay, I believe, okay, one passed away, but beyond that, I cannot, explain, I cannot explain it. I wasn't here.
You know, Mr. President, I honestly, I'm tossed between approving this and not approving it. And I just don't understand how we can go based on this list that really doesn't prioritize sidewalks. I don't know how you do it. And I don't know how, in good faith, I could tell a resident that may be on this list that you may or may not get your sidewalk done, depending on what. I can't tell them depending on what. I don't know. I mean, I really don't understand. This list, that I'm not trying to compare you with Mr. Buckley, but this list in the past that we asked for, I don't know if you've seen this.
No, I haven't.
It's DPW Outstanding Request. This was July 31st, 2009 to February 7th, 2012. But there is a key on this that really describes the nature of the sidewalk. And, you know, I can better understand what's going to be done based on this color code. And to me, it's very helpful. I don't know if you can, that would mean you'd have to review all these sidewalks.
One by one, Council, that's correct.
What do we do, Mr. President? For future reference, do we ask that a sidewalk be reviewed ahead of time before we get a list of sidewalks that need replacing? I mean, to me, that makes sense. You know, don't present me with a list if it's not a list of sidewalks that are going to be replaced. You know, have a separate list. Have 3 lists out there, but have one that we're going to get through. You know, I don't know what's going to be done in this list. You know, you know, I don't know what to do, Mr. President. I don't feel I have all the information in front of me with this list. I don't feel comfortable just allocating $500,000 and say, spend it as need be. You know, we're the fiscal watchdogs. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm going to wait to see what some of my colleagues have to say, but based on the list we presented tonight, I don't think I have adequate information to go forward and approve $500,000.
Vice President Longo Kern.
Thank you, President Del Russo. I think that was my concern 2 weeks ago when I asked for it, you know, because that is a lot of hours, a lot of manpower that we don't have to evaluate each and every sidewalk. But I did say, give us a list of, what are the first 10 to 100 sidewalks we will be replacing, so then we have a better idea of at least what streets we can tell people you're going to, and that those sidewalks are going to be replaced. So if the 500's approved, we go out for an RFP, and we get stabilize the money, how would you begin? Where would you start? With the stumps?
Okay, well, depending on the successful bidder, if he can supply us with 2 crews, I would go in 2 directions. One would be stumps, and stump and sidewalk combined. Second avenue would be sidewalks only.
I would be very comfortable tonight voting for the 192 stump removals, and I think we have a cost estimate of 100 to 150 on the higher end. I completely believe that this list is good enough, and we can tell everybody on the stump list that their stump's going to be removed and their sidewalk panel is going to be replaced. And I think that's a good starting point, especially where we're taking it out of free cash. We're not going out to bond on this specific project. But I have the concern too, and I think that's where I was coming from 2 weeks ago. I think this is definitely a good start, and we definitely have every stump that's on this list in front of us. But we get calls every day. I was told my sidewalk's on the list in 2015. Is it going to be done? I heard you were talking about 500,000, and we can't really tell them. I told one person specifically that we've requested a list of the top 100 that will definitely be done, but we still can't answer that question. And I do appreciate the full list, but I guess I'm kind of torn as well. But I think that I would move approval for knowing that the 192 stumps will be removed, definitely need to be removed, and I think that's something we should try to move on tonight, at least.
Councilor Caraviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think, first and foremost, I think we need to get this project off the ground and started. If we're going to sit there for another 2 weeks arguing who's going to get theirs done first, the end of the season is going to be done, and we won't have any sidewalks then. Mr. Kerins has only been on the job a couple of months, and and Mr. Buckley, Mr. Buckley did a great report there, and I think if we give Mr. Kerins some time, he can come up with a rating system. But if we're going to sit here another week and let another week go by, these contractors are going to get booked up, and we're not going to get anybody, and we're not going to get anything fixed, Mr. President.
On the motion for approval by Councilor Knight. Roll call vote has been requested. Councilor Marks.
I think Councilor Longo-Curran brought up a great suggestion about the 192 tree stumps, which include sidewalk panels. So I think that's a great suggestion. I would also ask my fellow colleagues that, if we do move approval on this, that we send a message, or at least request from here on in, that every sidewalk be reviewed and then graded, Mr. President. So in the future, it might not happen now, but in the future, we have a report that we can look at. It's easy to say let's just move forward, but guess what? We're accountable to the residents of this community and the taxpayers. And that's taxpayer money. That's $500,000 in taxpayer money. And from a business perspective, we should be able to look at it and say, here's $500,000, this is what we're getting. This is not rocket science. It's not rocket science. And not one person behind this reel can tell me this is what we're getting. Not one person. So I don't think this is, something that, we should be.
Councilor, watch your button there. You should have.
Thank you. I don't think it's something that we're asking that's out of the ordinary. I don't think, puts a strain on the department. If Mr. Kerins, which I believe tells me that staffing's low, then that needs to be addressed, because next time we're going to be faced with the same list of sidewalks that need to be done, and we're not going to know what needs to be done, Mr. President. Where does it stop? The buck stops here with this council. So yeah, it's easy to approve. You can put a paper, I'll approve everything. But it's our job to be the gatekeepers, Mr. President. That's what our role is, not just to approve. You can get 7 monkeys to approve. Our job is to be the gatekeepers and make sure that we're operating like you'd operate any other Fortune 500 company. And that's what we should be operating the city like, Mr. President. So if we put a contingent on this particular proposal, whether it's Council Longo's, which I agree, but that the next reporting, that the city, they'll have to hire someone if they don't have someone to manage it, the city, when they get a call for a sidewalk, that the sidewalk be immediately looked at and graded, Mr. President, like was done in previous years.
Is that an amendment,
That's all I'm
Counselor?
asking.
Is that an amendment, Council?
It would be an amendment to this paper, Mr. President, because without it, I can't support any more work done, Mr. President.
Did Longo have a amendment on that too? Did you have an amendment? Did you? Previously? No?
I was just going to add to those comments that I think that's something that hopefully is being done now with C-Click Fix. That it is being evaluated by our DPW. That would bring, you know, obviously a couple in per week evaluated, and a rating system is started. I don't know if that's happening, but that's something that should be happening.
They're not evaluated.
They're just placed on the list?
They're just placed, you put it on C-Click Fix, you get on the sidewalk list.
Then that would be my recommendation.
Well, that's the whole point I brought up.
Yeah.
I mean,
all righty, so we have a motion for approval as amended by Vice President Longo Curran and Council Marks. I think there's a couple citizens behind you, Commissioner, who would like to speak, so we gladly welcome them and their input tonight. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, excuse me, Rachel Tannenhouse, 26 Pearl Street. I don't know much about construction other than accessibility codes, but I can do math, and I've been doing some of it, and the issue is that you're not, under the current system, from what I can tell, and people can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, you're not actually going to get the information you want, because you're never going to be able to do, if nobody is assessing things ahead of time, you're never going to be able to get an accurate report of what kind of money it's going to cost to fix things, because when they get out there, from what I heard, both at the committee of the whole meeting and here, they're going to get there, and if they find out that the neighbor or the whole block or whatever also needs fixing, then they're going to have to do that too, which is legit, right? You don't want to have to go back there again. But what that means is that you never have an accurate count of how much money you're going to be spending. And not only is it not rated, but you don't necessarily know what's abutting it that also needs fixing. So even if you had that all rated, you still wouldn't have the numbers you want. And it wouldn't really be doable until they get out there, unless they do like a full report on everyone, which sounds kind of like it's difficult to do under the current circumstances. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm saying that you're never going to have, like that number that you want isn't available. That's a broken system. But I guess the question is the perfect going to be the enemy of the good here? You absolutely should know how people's money is being spent. It's a serious hole in the system that you can't have that number. Okay, but I don't know what 2 weeks is going to buy you in terms of getting that number, because they're not going to be able to they're not going to go out in 2 weeks probably to every site and say, all right, well, this guy, you know, he has, you know, a giant hole down through the entire planet right here, and next door that person's got a hairline crack. Like, they're not going to do that in 2 weeks. So I don't know, is there some kind of compromise? Is there, but the math just isn't there. I mean, for sure it's going to be more than 500,000, but it could be a lot more than 500,000 when you factor in the stumps, which you don't know how much. They said in the committee of the, you said in the committee of the whole, sorry, through the chair, who was also at the committee of the whole meeting, you know that they said that, you know, they don't know till they get to the stump, like how rooted it is in there. The stumps vary. They do, you know, they have previous experience, and so they estimate it based on that. But just the way it's set up right now, like, that takes some of the money out of the sidewalks, except for the stuff that's used to patch up the sidewalk where the stump used to be. But I don't think there's a thing that's going to give you the number that's going to make you comfortable voting for this. So I guess what you have to decide then is, what do you do about that, and what are you willing to do in the meantime? but the math's not there. Like, 500,000 is not gonna cover that much, but it's gonna get a start on it. So that's what you have to work with.
Thank you. Mr. Castanetti, please state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Thank you, President Delarusso. Andrew Castanetti, Cushing Street, Medford, Mass. Just as a concerned citizen, taxpayer, etc., and for other taxpayers, my concern, the old adage or saying is, it ain't broke, don't fix it, but if it's broke, you should fix it, obviously, especially on the side of safety concerns. My concern is if there's 600 or 400 sidewalk panels thereabouts and 192 stumps, I'm not sure if it's 400 locations or 600 locations. However, my concern is since they're on a list, so they made the grade, so to speak, as a problem, this 500,000 should hopefully be enough to take care of every single location and not start jumping down other addresses on the same street, because, I mean, 400,000, you couldn't even do Clippership Drive. That would eat the whole business of 400,000. So, and if they just say, well, my sidewalk is busted too, 5 doors down, well, did you at least call it in? Chances are it was not called in. So if they made the grade, but they must be in bad shape and a safety issue. Through the chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Brian Currens a question. On average, I'd like to know, first of all, one question is how many locations? Are there 400 or 600 locations? And then I have a follow-up question.
Okay, that'd be 600 combined.
Okay. And at the committee of the whole meeting with the mayor, you had mentioned, I believe, it costs $25 per panel for the concrete aggregate itself, material, and $28 labor, which equals approximately, you believe, $53 average per panel, depending on how the contract comes in. A panel, I presume, is 4 feet by 6 feet, if that, not even. Thank you. So my final question to you would be, hopefully my final question is, what, on average, just if you could just ballpark, 600 locations on average per location. Some might be yay big, some might be a lot bigger. Can you give me an average per location, what the cost might be, please?
That's pretty hard to say, depending on the location. You could be 1 panel, 2 panels, maybe 4, and a driveway apron may be involved. Each location would have to be examined in a case-by-case basis, all right, to come up with the actual final number.
Thank you. So it's unknown. So if we get $500,000 from the hard-earned taxpayers' money, from the free cash that the city is holding, if it's $1,000 a shot, I'm presuming that's going to cover 500 problem areas out of the 600 that's on the list. I'm just guesstimating this. However, Councilor Marks had alluded to past histories about this sidewalk repair business with tree stumps. And I'm not sure if he was accurate, but the numbers didn't make much sense. 1 million, then another million, that's 2 million, and the list of 400 or 600, and they never totally got completed. So you're talking like $10, $20, $30,000 per shot. I don't understand. Hopefully this will all work out. Thank you if you're listening.
Thank you very much. Any other citizens want to speak on this matter before we close off public participation? Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rob Capucci, 71 Evans Street. I know you've already had the discussion about Evans Street and you've taken action on that. But it looks like now it's like piecemealing something when, you know, stepping outside of the box and looking in, I think what a lot of people in Medford see is, like Mr. Reed spoke of before, you have allocation of funds in the MWRA for I believe he talked about sidewalks or something like $3 million, which 75% of which would be grants. We see in the free cash account something like $6 or $7 million. What we don't understand as citizens paying all these taxes is how come it can't be that this commissioner's office can't be staffed with the right amount of people to survey the city, make the proper assessments, hire the people that we need, and get the job done when there's all this money that's at your fingertips to be used. We're talking about $500,000 that we don't even know what it's going to be used for. We're talking about complaints and registers made to see Click Fix that are taken down and closed and resolved when they're obviously not. It's just a hard thing to wrap your mind around, seeing almost tens of millions of dollars with an understaffed department that doesn't even have the manpower to go out there and assess what needs to be fixed. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but it has to be said. Leadership has to come in. It has to be accountable and transparent. It has to look at what we've got in order to fund the resources to get these jobs done that are years past due. It's something to consider when you look at the budget next month. I would like to say this though, the parks project that has gone on, because a lot of hits and a lot of criticism has been made. I gotta give kudos too. You gotta also reward what's good as being done in Marsden Parks, new basketball court, and a few of the other parks. Excellent job. Excellent job. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Scarpelli?
If I can, Mr. President, thank you. But it's insightful when you listen to the history and what's gone on in the past here, and as we move forward. I did my own investigation, and you see what other communities are doing. And for this situation, I think we're in an unfortunate situation for the fact that this is what we have. Not to say you look at it lightly, but you look at different communities, and different communities have cement crews in place already, that when there is a concern, the concern is dealt with as a case-to-case basis, not something saved up to 600 pieces that unfortunately isn't, is something that happened just this week, but over the years. So we have identified locations, and you see the concerns in some of the comment sections. Some of the comment sections, it says National Grid did X, Y, and Z, and I have concerns with that too. But at the same time, the constituents that I've talked to that have these concerns are living with sidewalks that are dangerous, and stalling it now, I think it would be harmful to those constituents. But at the same time, it's something that we have to look at as a committee, looking at the budget and going forward, because a lot of these concerns are made because of systematic negligence, in a sense, that we had some faults and we need to correct them. So, I'd have to vote and move on with this project. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. So on the motion for approval by Councilor Knight, as seconded by Councilor Scarpelli, as amended by Councilors Lungo, Kern, and Marks, Councilor Caviello, finally.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Scarpelli has made a point. Other cities have crews in place to do these things around in-house. Maintenance has been the Achilles heel of the city for many years, and every year it grows and we pay for it. Now, you can see right now, 600 sidewalks. These sidewalks didn't break yesterday. It's been long overdue, and we made a small dent in it a couple of years ago. But again, the sidewalks just keep coming and coming and coming. We're an old city.
ask that the amendments be read back and a roll call vote be taken, Mr. President.
Yes, we're prepared for that. We're going to have a final amendment, Counselor? Counselor Marks.
Mr. President, a little while ago I mentioned that I was going to ask that Evans Street be put on this for complete repaving. And then we heard from the gentleman that worked in the engineer's office saying that there's probably need for a major water main and gas main on Evans Street. So at this point, it doesn't make sense to ask for a major repaving. But I would ask, Mr. President, that the city administration, as a C-paper, look into whether or not a complete water main and gas main needs to be replaced on Evans. And if so, that work be done immediately, and then we can discuss the repaving of the street, which will probably be part of that work anyways.
So we have a main paper that's been amended, so a B paper then would be separate.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. And the amendments were that, we've just heard stated by Council Marks, the B paper, which we'll take the vote on first, and then the main paper, which was the $500,000 allotment from free cash as requested by the mayor 2 weeks ago in council on May 17th, was amended first by Vice President Lungo-Kern, that we get an update, frequent updates on the progress of the project, and that preference be given to the most outstanding or oldest sidewalks on the list. Councilor Marks, and most dangerous. Yes, most dangerous. And Councilor Marks had an amendment on there, which is escaping my mind, and Madam Clerk is going to share it with me in a second.
That's sidewalks be assessed.
Sidewalks be assessed once they're reported.
And rated.
And rated.
For future reference.
For future reference, once they are reported. Right. So, Madam Clerk, on the B paper offered by Councilor Marks, would you please call the roll?
That is regarding Evans Street and the water
Street
main.
And for an assessment on water, gas, and other utility replacements which need to be facilitated prior to a resurfacing of the thoroughfare. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the B paper.
Councilor Cariello.
Yes.
Councilor Falco.
Yes.
Councilor Knight. Yes. Councilor Vice President Longo-Kern.
Yes.
Councilor Marks. Yes. Councilor Scarpelli. Yes. President Del Rizzo.
Yes, with the vote of 7 in the affirmative, none in the negative, the B paper passes. Now on to the main paper. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Carbell.
Yes.
Councilor Falco.
Yes.
Councilor Knight.
Yes.
Vice President Longo-Kern.
Yes.
Councilor Marks.
Yes.
Councilor Scarpelli.
Yes.
President Del Rizzo.
Yes, with the vote of 7 in the affirmative, none in the negative, the main paper passes. Thank you all very much. And the records of the meeting of May 28th, 2016 will pass to Councilor Falco. Mr. Counselor, how indeed did you find those records?
Thank you, Mr. President. I reviewed the records, found them to be in order, and move approval.
On the motion for approval by Councilor Falco, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. On the motion of Councilor Knight for adjournment, all those in favor? All those opposed? Meeting adjourned.